This is the story of exactly how I bought my very first rental property. Actually, there's two components to this. The first property I bought as a rental, and the first rental property I bought that actually was done with a little bit more knowledge and a little bit more execution planning, right? The first property that I bought was actually on a little spur of a shopping spree that I did with my new real estate agent, and I had put a lot of things in place, and I was in a very unique position liquidity-wise where I wanted a couple of things. I wanted to get my money out of my bank account. That might sound a little weird. Not everybody's in that situation. I didn't want it there because when it was there, for me personally, I gravitated towards cars. I'd buy the right cars the right way, private party, and I just maintained the money. They wouldn't lose money. They wouldn't really make money. I wanted to stop doing that. So I started putting the money in real estate. I also had an active business that was making me a good amount of money every year, and I needed write-offs. I needed depreciation. I needed tax breaks in some way. Real estate's a great way to do that. So here's the full story of how I did this. First of all, if you don't know who I am, my name is Hayden Bowles. I'm primarily inside the e-commerce industry. That's what I've been doing for about 6 years. For the last 5, I've built one of the largest e-commerce based YouTube channels. We also talk about real estate, personal finance, a lot of fun stuff. Here's my Instagram. You can follow me over there. This channel is a newer one talking about investing, real estate, a bunch of different fun stuff. I recently started and officially opened up my real estate fund. We are raising money on a 48-unit property that I'm purchasing for $3.6 million. I'm just going to start scaling further into multifamily properties. I've become very close friends with people who have billions of dollars worth of real estate total accumulated. The largest individual holder is about $400 million. And it's been a blast actually learning this industry and taking the last year and a half with about 50% of my time every day to dive into this. So when I bought this house, 3 weeks later, this duplex, and then about a month after that, this house, which by the way were all killer deals. I still own 2 out of those 3 properties. I was sitting very liquid. And what I did, I had gotten a pre-approval letter from a mortgage broker that was a close friend of my real estate agent. I had the trifecta here. I had asked one of my friends who had one rental property, I said, "Who's your guy? Introduce me, I don't know anything." So he introduced me to the real estate agent. The real estate agent grew up with and is best friends with the 2 other most important people, the debt and the property manager. And the property management company was a huge company managing about 4,000 units locally in Arizona at the time. A lot of student housing, a lot of single family stuff, a lot of multifamily, a little bit of commercial like strip mall and office space. A little bit of everything. And so what I did, I said, hey, here's my situation. I got the pre-approval letter, and I went and bought about $1.2 million worth of properties in like 60 to 70 days. And that might sound a little bit aggressive. I put 5% down on one property, which was $26,000. That was on this house. First place that I ever bought. Awesome, right? Shortly thereafter, I put about $95,000-ish down on the duplex, which I bought for $375,000. This one was a little bit of an interesting story. And don't worry, I'm going to get to the specifics on tips and tricks, things that are a little bit more important and relevant to you. When I bought this duplex, I couldn't get the financing for it. And the reason for that, thankfully, wasn't because I wasn't approved. It was because one of the units was completely trashed. It didn't have fire damage, but the front door was missing. And I kid you not, half of the side door was the bottom half. I don't know how that worked. The bottom half was just gone, wasn't there, right? Spray paint all on the inside. The kitchen was ripped out. Bathroom was just non-existent. So it's not livable, and that actually affects residential financing for a mortgage. So what I had to do was actually have the seller fix it up. I paid for the renovations. I sent our people over there. When I say our, I mean my new friend over at the property management company. We had to actually pay to get that done when I still didn't own the property. And so I did that. I took that risk. It was like $4,200. Got it into a livable condition. Closed on the property. A month later, bought the next house. Put about $85,000 down. Paid $390,000 for it. And these were all killer properties that today are worth individually at least about $200,000 more than I purchased them for. Some of them a little bit more than that, which has been fantastic. And so I still own 2 out of 3. Now, after that, I didn't do much for a while. I continued running my business. I was just stockpiling cash. I was doing my thing, studying real estate, learning. I ended up buying my dream home shortly thereafter, about 6 months later. That was right when COVID hit, stole that property. A really good deal, couldn't pass it up. And then later that year is when I consider myself to have purchased my first rental property. You might say, well, you already had 2 houses and a duplex that we had renovated and they were stable and doing well, spitting off a little bit of cash flow. But the 4-plex that I bought was my first rental property. And when I say that, I mean proper planning. I knew how to write offers. I knew how to do my inspection. I understood what the inspection was and all the items talked about. I understood the financing. I understood cash flow. I understood debt structures. And I understood what people look for when they're underwriting a deal. And not to say that I was an expert. Obviously, I'm way better now than I was back then. But I knew a little bit more about the intention. I wasn't just buying it with the goal of, hey, as long as it breaks even, right? Which was really what I did with the other three. Now, don't get me wrong. I knew the other three were really good deals. And they have been super good. They've cash flowed. But for me, it was more so just like a storage. And I knew that it would pay down some principal. It would give me the tax benefits. And that was my approach. There's nothing wrong with that. There's a lot of people that do that at a very large scale. However, the fourplex, I turned around, started renovating some of those units, started gutting them, turning over the tenant base. The average rent was about $700 a month. Now the average rent is about $13.85 a month is what we're renting those for 2-bedroom units in Arizona. I won't say exactly where, but a great property. And then I ended up selling the duplex, which was a great property. Again, I bought that one for $375,000, sold it for $563,000 just 3 years later. It was really good deal. Regret selling it for sure, but I wanted to learn the 1031 exchange process. I rolled that money along with, I think, a little bit of other money into a 6-unit property that I purchased. Then I bought another fourplex. I think I might have bought about another triplex in there. I've done 2 LP positions. I've invested money into other people's deals, a JV position as a 50-50 partner for somebody who needed money. I've done some hard money lending, and now I'm also, again, underneath my real estate fund, Bulls Capital, purchasing the 48-unit right outside of Cleveland, Ohio. So now you have a background, now you have a framework, a quick 6-minute thing here. That was how I entered the real estate space. Again, while still working full-time inside my company that was, relatively automated, so I could easily take the time and focus on real estate. Now, the difference between the 2 times that I bought, the property sporadically for other reasons versus my first real investment property where it's like, hey, this thing will cash flow above 10% once I renovate it. Here's what we're going to do. Here's the materials. We're going to duplicate the same thing each unit. Here's the debt. Here's I knew what I was doing. And in that situation, my property management had been so good, I just wanted to give them more properties because they're doing such a great job. And so some of the things that I wish I would have known back when I was buying the other 3 properties, and it's something that I take into account today, when you have the opportunity to buy something that is going to make money and it's going to fit within whatever your criteria is, buy the whole block. And I don't mean literally buy the block. I know somebody who bought about 1,300 units in downtown Houston a long time ago, and he ended up becoming his own competition. It was too much in one area. You get the idea. But I mean, buy every good deal. I was a little bit nervous, and there was multiple homes, individual single-family houses that I was looking at back in the day when I first bought those 3. And I was like, I don't get the right feel from this neighborhood. There was no difference between the house and a different house. It was just my personal opinion. And while there is a gut feeling, and I am glad because I definitely picked higher quality products in a higher quality neighborhood for the same price, and they've definitely appreciated more than the other ones would have. So I did pick right in that sense. Your gut feeling has something to do with it, but your personal opinion, which is different from your gut feeling, is not involved in a mathematical equation when you're talking about numbers on a screen, debt, and rent roll. That's basically it. And so for me, the thing I wish I would have done is purchase more multifamily property. And because I wasn't working with a broker, I wasn't working with a real estate agent that had ever done a multifamily transaction, and this is nothing against him, I still work with him, he's a great guy, part of a great company, but he just doesn't do multifamily. It's just not his thing. He's a single family real estate agent. Does really well, that's awesome. However, when I was trying to get into multifamily, it was a little bit difficult to find people to ask questions and just people who had more experience. So it took a little bit more time to get in there. But I wish that I would have had somebody in my corner pushing, hey, Hayden, buy this fourplex. It's the same price as the one house. Your house might rent for, at the time, $2,200 or $2,300, but at the time, the fourplex, each unit would rent for $1,100. So you have the same price property with the same exact debt. You're putting basically the same amount down, 20% for single family, 25% for multi. However, the rent would be double. There'd be a little bit more property management expense, a little bit more other expenses tied to the percentage, but that was it. The cash flow would have been huge. So when my single family homes, when I first bought them, were just barely breaking even, the duplex I bought was making $1,000 a month. And I started to notice that. And that's when I started digging in. And so when I realized, hey, the amount of units you have matters, and there's a lot of people these days who are all unit focused and they own 1% of it, but just in general, a rule of thumb, the more doors you have, the better. And so it's one of those things that would have allowed me to scale a little bit quicker. I would have done really well, but you don't know what you don't know. And so for me, one thing that I do think I did really well, and I think I still do well today, that I see some people, not that I'm the biggest expert, but I do see some people losing deals over this, is the interest rate on your debt. I see a lot of people giving up good rental properties because, I don't want to pay 5.5% for residential financing. dude, the property's going to cash flow. It's not too expensive. It's just, if anything, look at the positive. It's a bigger write-off that you get at the end of the year because you're paying more money in interest. And while that might be the bad way to look at it, there is a positive to it. You know what I mean? So it's not like, hey, instead of 3%, I'm paying 6% for my debt, and now the deal doesn't cash flow. That's a different situation. But if it works in both numbers, and it works just fine at the new current, especially right now, the current interest rates, why would you lose the deal over your personal feelings towards an interest rate? I think that's dumb. And so I see a lot of people lose deals over that. They get into the same deal with the exact price. I've had a couple of my friends who have, a couple $1 million of real estate. They have hundreds of thousands of dollars laying around, and they're negotiating with the property seller, and they can't come to terms because of some $5,000 thing or some, $10,000 expense. And it's like, dude, you're buying a $700,000 building. If the deal does not work over $20,000, then the deal didn't work to begin with. So either you're playing with too thin of a margin, or you're just letting your feelings get in the way, and you're kind of like trying to nickel and dime your way to $1 million. And so that's something, again, that I personally believe I've done really well, is I never cared too much about exact expenses. And from a business perspective, sure, make sure everything makes sense, financials, but I also like for everybody to get paid. I have great relationships. Well, I don't keep up with most of them, but multiple people that I've purchased a property from, the sellers, some of them have sold me other properties. And it's just something where if they ever have something, they send it to us. One of them had a property he was looking at buying and didn't buy for whatever reason. It didn't fit his criteria. He said, hey, you should check this out. When does that happen? That doesn't happen unless you're really a pleasure to work with. And so I take the same approach, property management, real estate agent, whatever. One of my main property managers in the company, he moved. Him and his family, he's a great guy. He moved out of state. So what did I do? I go over, I give him an amazing gift, I shake his hand, I say thank you, talk to him and his wife. I mean, he truly helped me so much in real estate, understand stuff. I mean, he, was managing hundreds of units worth of apartment complexes. And I gave him a beautiful, beautiful, fresh off the line, I don't know if any of you guys are gun people, never shot, brand new. When you couldn't get this gun, I had just gotten half a dozen of them to give to people because I care. Gave him a brand new 43X, just a beautiful, beautiful Glock midsize. And it was just, and he was so shocked. His wife was like, you're kidding. Like, it was definitely a little bit of an interesting subject there, but he was so stoked. And it was the best thing to be able to do that because I truly appreciate it. And so it's the same thing. Like, I'm going through the process on a flip right now on a fourplex, and like I plan to help people out in additional ways, giving cash to people. I gave cash to tenants who were on month-to-month leases just to get them to leave so we could renovate. I didn't need to do that. I could have kicked them out. So for me, it's just do good business all around. Don't penny pinch, especially in an industry where there's so much money flowing and you're talking about big numbers. It's the same reason why I spend about $50,000 a year on my real estate education specifically. That's a lot of money, but when you're talking about real estate, that's like part of the margin in one deal. So it's like a really big difference if you mess something up or if you don't know something. So it's really important. So that's the story behind my first couple rental properties and then my first actual rental when I knew what I was doing, and now continuing to move forward. A couple things I did well, a couple things that I didn't do as well, and just things that I wish I would have done more of. Because at the end of the day, I've noticed a recurring theme. The friends that I have, other people, just people in the real estate space that I watch that I don't know personally, the reoccurring theme is I should have bought more. Right? I should have bought more. Higher conviction. That's really all it was. And so continue to push, make sure your debt is always in line. Don't be doing anything too crazy and risking money going, risking properties going back to the bank. Like, keep it in check, but definitely put your foot on the gas. And there's going to be opportunities. I definitely think in the current market cycle we're in, there's still opportunities. The most important thing though, and I can talk about this in another video, is not necessarily the deal, but I think right now more than ever, it's the debt. You need to make sure you're in a good position with long-term debt. I think there's going to be a lot of people right now and in the next 12 months getting squeezed on the bridge loans that they set up mid-COVID that are expiring in 2 years. And they were thinking they can do a refinance at 3.5%. Those syndicators, they're going to lose a lot of doors. I think there's going to be a little bit of blood on the streets, not in terms of pricing, but there's just going to be some deals pop up. So that's all I got for you in this video. I really hope you enjoyed it. I greatly appreciate it if you drop a like and subscribe down below. I appreciate your attention if you made it all the way through the video. Be sure to follow over on the Bulls Capital page for the real estate fund. Going to be talking a lot more about the property that is on there. I have the inspection for that later this week. Super excited to just go through the process, learn a lot more, and I've been connecting with some amazing investors. I have my good friend friend Tim Bratz, who owns almost $500 million worth of real estate involved in this project, and he's bringing some money to the table as well. It's going to be a lot of fun, just bringing on a lot of really cool people, and it's been amazing just going through the process of talking to investors and structuring the raise of the capital and dealing with the attorney, and everybody's just been such a pleasure to work with. So really looking forward to doing more deals and excited for what's to come. So hope you enjoyed the video. I'll see you in the next one.